Muito boa tarde e bem-vindos aqui a esta sessão da tarde, que vai ser agora durante 1h30 em inglês. Okay, let's move to English. Okay. We have the pleasure to have with us Robin Rice. So the idea of this session is, as I think we are all in an important moment in terms in our institutions, in our research centers, in our infrastructures, trying to improve the RDM services that we offer, trying to better organize, trying to have institutional roadmaps and strategies. We thought that was important to have try to look to good examples. University of Edinburgh in Europe is a great example. Over 10 years of experience with professional RDM services and providing support to research centers, researchers, etc. So we thought it was quite relevant to have these examples, and then we can discuss a bit what are the challenges that you see and what are the most relevant components of the services that Edinburgh provide that are also feasible in our own research centers and institutions. Looking back, looking forward, Research Data Service at University of Edinburgh is the name of the presentation of Robin Rice. That, in fact, is the lead research data support in the University Collections Information Services of Edinburgh. This is the name of the service. Robin is a data librarian, as she likes to say it. Is head of this data research, this research data support services. I have a long experience. Recently, it was in mid 2023, became the president of IASSIST. Some of you may know this association. Is the International Association for Social Science, Information Service and Technology. Maybe she will invite you also to join the conference this year in Bristol. So a long experience, and I think it's great to have this opportunity to share. So please think about what you can learn from this example of Edinburgh, what is feasible, what are the challenges, and then we can have a discussion because all our institutions need to do the proper path. Edinburgh also did it, so Robin will tell us about what they are offering and looking back, looking forward. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I just put it down a bit because I'm short. Oh, yeah. So, while I'm thinking of it, I should thank Pedro thank you for having me, and also for mentioning IASSIST. It is an international association of data professionals. The roots are with the social sciences, but it's open to all disciplines working with data, and we're going to be gathering in Bristol, University of West of England, in first week of June for the 50th anniversary conference of IASSIST, because they've been going since 1974. So if anybody tells you that data services are a new thing, they're proof that it's not that new. And so yes, the call for papers is out now. So please have a look and see if you can join us. So I've been a data librarian for a long time, and since kind of the mid-2000s, I've kind of pivoted my role at the University of Edinburgh more towards research data management and digital curation. I was involved in the setup of the UK Digital Curation Centre, which you probably may be familiar with. And I was based at Edinburgh, and since about 2016, we've moved our service into the academic library, the main library and university collections, because as of that time, it became much more mainstream for academic libraries to be involved in data support. So that's where we are. So I'm going to give you a little more. That's kind of about me. I am, by the way, if you can tell from my accent, an American. Americans are known for dressing casually, but I wouldn't quite be dressing this casually if I could help it, but KLM still has my suitcase, so I won't be able to wow you with my sartorial style, but this is now about the background to the Research Data Service at the University of Edinburgh. So I guess my font has changed. I hope you can read it all right. It doesn't look like the font I started with, but so University of Edinburgh, of course, it's a big research institution. It's an old, they call it an ancient university in Scotland, and have a lot of students. This data is a little bit out of date, but yeah, about 50,000 students, 40% of whom are postgrads, 50% of whom are international. We have a lot of academic staff too, 9,000. A lot of support staff as well. We do a lot of research. The mission, I like to point out, is the creation, dissemination, and curation of knowledge. So it goes really well with the whole idea of data curation as well. The structure of the university, this is just one part of the campus with the old college, which makes such a nice, pretty picture, but we are spread out all around the city with different campuses, and we've been growing quite a lot in recent times. I think we're kind of plateauing now, but we have 21 schools and 3 colleges, and we also have some cross-cutting structures going on along with that as part of the Data-Driven Innovation Program, which received money through the city-region deal. It was the first time that UK government money through city-region deals were used towards data infrastructure, and that's because people at our university and other cooperating universities made the pitch that if you invest here, we can turn Edinburgh into the data capital of Europe, and so they're trying to attract investment, fuel entrepreneurship, and deliver inclusive growth, and they're working very much in partnership with local small and medium enterprises. We see robots around, and we have these hubs, the Bayes Institute, Edinburgh Futures Institute, and the Usher Institute, which each have a focus on data science and cross-disciplinary research that kind of match those 3 colleges. So Bayes for science and engineering and informatics, Edinburgh Futures Institute for the humanities, and the Usher Institute for health and medical research, as well as Easter Bush for veterinarian research, and the Harriet Watt National Robotarium. And there's a whole other facility that does data and computing support besides our information services group, which is called the Edinburgh International Data Facility. So quite a lot going on. Still setting the scene for where we sit. So within the library, we're part of this larger group of library research support, headed up by my colleague Dominic Tate, and these fine people leading the different teams, scholarly communications, research information systems, and a new fledgling team. It's 1.5 people, but they want to grow and be a team of open research. And that includes Carrie Miller, who splits her time leading on that, and with us as a senior person on the research data support team, and the first citizen science engagement officer based in a library in the UK. And there's a lot going on with the scholarly communications team, which isn't the topic here today, but they have done a lot of leadership in the UK for open access, developing the first rights retention strategy for the UK. And with all this innovation, Dominic put us forward for the Times Higher Education Award, and we're living in the glory of having been shortlisted for the best library team in the UK, and in 1 week's time we'll find out. if that glory is short-lived or whether we're going to win. And we're all based in this very beautiful building underneath this other very beautiful building of Edinburgh Castle. The research data support team is the front face of the research data service, and we also work very closely with IT infrastructure because this may be, I like to think this is a part of the reason for our success is that we're a merged service of library and information technology, so it's all under the umbrella of information services or information services group. And so IT infrastructure people are just working down the hallway from us. And also the digital library, which is software developers that maintain our platforms, and we work very closely with them to meet our, to develop the systems for the requirements that we and the users need. And this is the team, including our honorary team member, Clara Boavida, who was with us for a good month, helping us with various projects. And it's the best way to get a picture of our team smiling is at the pub. So that's what we have there. So, so I wanted to go back a little bit to the development. I don't want to be too backwards looking, but Pedro encouraged me, so start getting nostalgic here. But I tried to generalize some of the things that led into the development of the service so that it's hopefully a little more relevant for you. So I know this happens in a lot of places, and it sounds like it's happening here within your forums and working groups. But so within our institution, I think one of the things that happened was experts gathered together with a desire to make change. And for us until 2008, we started up this very grassroots RDM action group. And it was just a few people from some of these different areas coming together and saying, you know, what do we know about these user gaps and what could we build that could fix it? And we had some very clever people. I know that Pedro and Eloy know Stuart McDonald, who we remember fondly. Tony Weir is still at the university and Stuart Lewis is not. But we're the ones responsible for all the confusing names of the service, like data share, data store, data vault, data sync, and everybody forgets which is which, so that's our fault. Point number 2 is about champions. When I talk to colleagues in universities that seem to be struggling getting research data services going, I notice a difference that they might not have a champion identified, and it just really helps. So this is kind of the bottom-up, top-down. It does help to have, it doesn't have to be someone right at the top. Like in this case, someone was appointed as the Chief Information Officer, Vice Principal Knowledge Management, and Librarian to the university. But he was formerly a PI, so he really got it in terms of research data management, Principal Investigator. He was our champion, and he set up these 2 groups, and he's since retired, and we have had several champions since then. The most recent one is Professor Andrew Miller from the School of Biosciences, who served as our chair of our Research Data Service Steering Group. And sometimes I show a picture of him in his profile because he puts that part of the role right on his profile as if he's as proud of that as all the accomplishments he's done as a professor and an academic. So it's just great to have somebody who's very enthusiastic about the service, and you know, some people like committee work and some people don't, but if this particular cause means something to them and you can get them involved, get a senior academic involved in your project, that really helps a lot to get further academic buy-in for what you're doing. And then I was just thinking about some other ways we were taking advantage of the environment at the time and just was trying to avoid this terminology, but you know, leverage the drivers of the day that were that we could use to make our business case, and also the key messages to users. So things like the funders' policies are very important. Even if the funders are not enforcing their policies, you can at least point to the words and point out to the researchers that that the funders say that you should do this best practice. But it also helped in our case to get the resources to build the service. It was seen as the university needed to comply with the policies. One funder in particular at the time, it was the EPSRC, kind of broke ranks with the other UK funders and said, instead of saying researchers should create a data management plan, they said the institution should ensure that all researchers have a data management plan. And it kind of turned the tables and got the attention on institutions making policies and creating services and taking some responsibility for the behavior of the researchers. So that was actually quite helpful. They also created the rule that data should be kept for 10 years from the last access, so that there was a reason to hold data for the longer term. Publishers' mandates is also very useful. We have researchers coming to us, I need a DOI for my paper. No problem, just give us some better metadata and we'll give you the DOI. Deposit your data with us. Legislation can be used, if, when GDPR was new, we used that to great advantage, and it's still quite a scary thing to get people thinking about data breaches, and you can use that to show that you need tools and support to prevent the worst happening. Similarly with research misconduct stories, if you see it in the news, hopefully it won't be at your institution, but you can tuck it away as a scare story for making your case. I think whatever's going on with the research culture now, it would be open science, and in the UK we always have our research excellence framework to hold up and say, we must get funding through the REF, and every academic knows the REF is important. There's literature that shows people get more citations for open science. You can you can gather evidence locally about the pain points that researchers are having, so it's very grounded in their own experience. For us, there was a lot of complaints that there was nowhere for them to store their data. So how could they comply with best practice? And we used that case to get a lot of money to build build data store, which is file storage basically for active data. What was I going to say about local pain points? I guess I covered that. I think I had one more tiny little point, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. And then the policy, you want to make sure that the policy is working for the service, and vice versa. So you don't want it working against your service. So the policy. So when we first did our policy in 2011, it was the first in the UK, and there was a bit of worry that mandates were being said to the researchers that we couldn't back up as an institution, so it was labeled aspirational. We didn't have the services and support in place yet. But the existence of that policy helped shore up the resources. We said, well, this policy exists, so we need money for these services, to staff the services, to provide the support directly to the researchers, so that the researchers will do the right thing like it says here in this policy. So we've now renewed the policy in 2022, and we were able to actually name those services that researchers should use, but there's still an element of choice, so they don't need to use the local services if they have a sensible plan in place, and they might be collaborating elsewhere and use different services. And with the policy, I would just say, one of the stakeholders said this to me: make sure you go around to all the stakeholders and run it past them. And one was very questioning about the musts and the shoulds in the policy. And well, do you mean should or do you mean must? And he was actually trying to get me to put more must in there because the researchers are going to ignore anything that just says should. But we didn't want to put everything with a must because it's not realistic either. Like we put in that we'll update the policy every 5 years, and maybe the culture will change enough we can put a few more of the musts in there. But there's no point in go must if everyone's going to ignore it. So it needs to be credible. Yeah, I think I mentioned choice. I think I remembered my point from the previous slide, which is the thing about altruism. I think you can use that with early career researchers, PhD students maybe. Data sharing is good, but the senior PIs seem a bit cynical for that, so use these other points that really hit them where their daily practice is rather than only altruism. And then add functions, scale the service up as you're able to do that, and sometimes it's worth it to take on a little bit more maybe that your team can handle, and you're running around quite a bit so that you can prove there's demand for something and actually you need more resource to do that service. So we started with data store, which is the active storage space, which is free at point of use up to 0.5 terabyte, and then after that you can pool the data. Data share, which is the open access repository. Data vault, which is the long-term retention solution. And more things were added in that time. We used something like this data lifecycle. You can map the services onto it and see where there's gaps, or maybe you don't need a local service there because it's covered elsewhere. It's covered in their discipline. It can be quite useful as an exercise. And then in 2016, this hodgepodge of different components of the service were brought together, and the CIO said, no, this is a major service of the university, and we're going to call it the Research Data Service, okay? And he believed in using a service management framework that had a service owner for every service. So, I'm the second service owner that we've had. And since then, we've been focused largely on increasing service uptake, making systems more robust, securing funding for adequate staff, and we've done a bit around open science tools, which I guess will come up in a future slide. And then last point about developing the service is try to make sure the services are interoperable. It could be open for some criticism here, but I think we have things working pretty well between all these different systems, so that you can go take your data from the active data store and put it in one of the repositories directly. We have, if you use our repository, we'll create a record for you in the CRIS system, which is, we use Pure, and then that becomes a data record in there. So we have it's basically a university's data asset register as well. So obviously, from the FAIR principles how important interoperability is. And now I'm moving on to kind of the present. I'll try to skip things where I may have already mentioned in the development section, but so we have this policy, and it's really grounded in the university's wider commitment to things like research integrity, data protection, information security, and we try and show how it fits in with that. It requires DMPs for all research projects, not just the ones where there's a funder requiring it, but that is hard to enforce, and that is one of the things we still struggle with, even getting all of the PhD training programs to require data management plans from the PhD students, for example. They don't, only a couple of them really do it exhaustively. And it mandates FAIR and data sharing in repositories. But mainly it kind of articulates the clear responsibilities of the researcher or the PI or the student in some cases, and of the institution to provide the support and tools for them to do their work. So, so this is just kind of a trot through the components, many of which I've already mentioned, of what kind of support we provide. This is the most simplified data lifecycle I could think of, with some graphic design, because we didn't want to get stuck. Some researchers were saying, I don't they didn't relate to that data lifecycle. I think librarians really like it. Researchers are kind of like, why are you giving me jargon? So I think this is a bit more simplified. It shows with a clock before, during, and after, and then the training support underlies the whole thing. We have that also reflected on the homepage on the website, so it's also kind of a before, during, and after way to drill down into the components of the service. And so on the before side, the key messages there are, yes, do your data management plan, but plan for sharing at the end of the project, because if you don't do that, you probably either will not want to share or will not be able to share. Things like getting the consent forms right or the information sheet, so that even if it is good practice, ethical probably, to tell human subjects you're going to deposit the data set in a repository, either open access or restricted access. Even if by law they're not identifiable, they're anonymous, it's good practice to tell them. So things like that for planning to share, and we have courses that explain this stuff. And also do a data protection impact assessment if you're working with humans, because that will check what kind of risks are involved. It kind of complement each other. I think the DMP and the DPIA. The DPIA is structured to look at the information flows. Is it leaving the institution? Where is it going? And the DPIA, and also looks at the risks of every time the information does move somewhere else. And then you can assess those risks and take appropriate steps. So we do always encourage planning. We do have DMP Online subscription that we can customize the tool, but it's also available free. And then during the project, we have a whole bunch of things. A lot of these come from the IT side of things, the Active Data Store, collaboration tool called DataSync, which is based on OwnCloud open source software, and it allows people to give a URL to their collaborators to get access to the data on our servers. Everybody knows GitHub, but we also have an instance of GitLab locally, which means that people could keep things private if they wanted to. And we have a subscription with Open Science Framework so that we can get a bit more visibility and get some member benefits, such as training for our members for OSF. And we have an Electron Lab notebook that we offer licenses for, which is our space. And then on the archiving, this is where where my team puts a lot of their effort into. Data share and data vault. So data share is the open one. It's multidisciplinary. It's based on DSpace. We have we have like kind of 1.5 software developers that can work on these two systems and make enhancements for them. We can take up to 100 gigabytes of deposits, but if it's bigger than that, it should go into the data vault, which is, so data share, we aim to keep the data forever. We have Core Trust Seal certification. Data vault, we won't keep it forever, but we'll keep it for as long as the researcher can pay for, and they could pay for it right from their grant for the future. So it might be a 3-year grant, but they can store it for maybe 10 years, just pay up front. There's 3 copies, 2 on tape in 2 different data centers on campus, and 1 in a cloud service that's is very cheap to put the data in and expensive to take it out, and it's just kind of our 3rd disaster recovery copy, so we hope not to have to use it. And we've got that working for up to 10 terabytes deposit, and you can have several deposits in a vault. And a vault roughly is equivalent to a research project. So we're getting some big, larger data in there, but we're also getting sensitive data in there. And it's been approved by the local NHS for certain kinds of patient data, de-identified, which is considered much too sensitive to share in an open access repository, even if it is anonymized. And that's based on bespoke open source software, which provides the web front end to the tape drives and things like that. So it is an overhead to build your own system and to maintain it. But there was nothing at the time that was an alternative, and we're kind of looking around now to see if there is something now that we should be migrating to rather than maintaining our own system. But it can be done as long as, there's little kind of lessons learned about keeping the libraries up to date, not letting the code get too far out of date. Obviously with DSpace, we got the whole community that helps keep things up to date. So then we have the training. These are the 4 scheduled workshops that we keep iterating over and over again, and we try to get the word out in school newsletters and everywhere that this is available for students to self-sign up. It's also available for staff to sign up. And we also try and make the point that we'll come do the tailored course, or tailored workshop for any amount of time that you want for a group of researchers. We also have a couple of online trainings. Mantra's been around for a long time, but we do try to keep it up to date. We still have some edits to publish that Clara worked on, very embarrassing. By the end of the year, we're going to do that. And there's a research data and sharing MOOC, which cohorts can take together for about 5 weeks. And yeah, so that's the service. And then on to the kind of like the challenges, trying to do the reflection of thinking. As I said, we're kind of interoperable with different pieces, and that group, that team that's working on open research uses the League of European Research Universities roadmap for kind of reporting our progress on these, the 9 pillars that LARU came up with. This is like the red, amber, green, so I guess we're not in the red on any of these, but some of them are stronger than others. Things like culture change, there's a vice principal that has enrolled a new whole research cultures program. And some of that is about inclusiveness in the workplace and research integrity, bullying and things like that, but we always try and emphasize also the open science aspects of culture change. Future of scholarly publishing, as I've said, doing some great things there with the rights retention strategy. We have Diamond open access with book publishing, journal publishing. Fair data, we have data share. And even Data Vault, which is restricted access, we can give them a DOI, and it's findable in the CRIS system. So it's kind of minimally fair, and people can find the data and request access. EOSC, we do have Brexit, so things are somewhat problematic there. Also not, maybe some of you are also trying to understand how to fit your institution in with EOSC, because I think it's geared more towards disciplinary communities. Education and skills, we don't have mandated training, and so I think that's where there's room for improvement, but it's not for us to mandate the training, so that needs to come from the researchers and the schools themselves. Recognition and rewards, we're signed up to things like DORA, but there's probably a lot, it's being looked at as more that can be done. And as I said, we have a citizen science officer and participatory research based in the library, so we've given ourselves a green mark on that. I'm just going to kind of skip over this quickly, I think, but we did a review. We got some external feedback, talking to our researchers or surveying them. We did kind of a quantitative and a qualitative look. And the qualitative study, was looking at perceptions of the digital research services, which includes research data service and research computing service especially, and looking at gaps and what should be focused on for future investment, because we have a whole steering group for the digital services, and we can get the academics' attention on this stuff. So Research Consulting is an external firm that did the interviews and focus groups, and they were quite diplomatic with their findings. They said Edinburgh does have good infrastructure and research culture to be leading in the digital space. They claimed there was widespread appreciation for the current services. I think the people they interviewed may have been a bit skewed toward people who already knew about the services as a qualitative study, and the disciplines that were doing a lot of data science and using a lot of computing were quite happy, but some of the disciplines maybe that are coming on board, emerging into the digital arena and the humanities and things like that, had some more problems. They need some more on-ramps, some more hand-holding, I guess, and also want more flexibility in the services to be relevant to them. And this is just kind of some of the quantitative results from a local research group in the medicine faculty called Camarades, which asked people that in all three colleges, and this is the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, so it kind of shows the low awareness of many of these services that we've been doing for so many years. But, it's a cup half full or half empty. About a quarter knew research data support existed. They've heard of data share, data store, and data vault. And even fewer than that had used it, so cup half full, cup half empty. This, they pointed out to us, shows the skewing of the satisfaction scale is to the right, which is good. More satisfaction overall than dissatisfaction, but I'm kind of looking at that yellow in the middle, neither dissatisfied nor satisfied. That's not great if we're not making enough of an impact on them for them to even have an opinion about us. And then I pulled some of these quotes out from the free text comments, and they just kind of make me laugh, actually. But I'm halfway through and only just hearing about any of these services. And I think it's a shame that the university offers so much, and this knowledge is just coming via this survey. Wow. And it's difficult to get access to them. It would be helpful to have somebody to speak to at proposal grant stage and post-award. I mean, how many ways can we try and get our word out? And we're also, I didn't mention, available through the IAS help desk. So, the helpline that everybody knows, if their laptop breaks, they can go into this system and ask for help. They can ask for help through that too, without knowing our name, knowing our service, anything. But, it's kind of like, it would be helpful to have someone to speak to. We're here, come speak to us. But, and when I've presented that slide elsewhere, a lot of people at other institutions say the same thing. It's the visibility of the service. If people don't know it's there, then they don't know to go looking for it. But this is kind of just wrapping up here. Other things I can think of that are on the challenges side and next steps is, thinking about the future, really. Data stewardship networks are obviously a big thing, and the way that kind of is coming out at University of Edinburgh so far is the College of Medicine, Veterinary Medicine have hired 4 data managers to work with particular institutes to make sure that the researchers have routes to managing and storing their data well, answering a lot of data governance questions. Data governance is a big gap for us. They come to our team with a lot of problems about sensitive data, and we help them, but sometimes it's a little bit of sticky plaster. And the Edinburgh Research Office has been meaning to hire a team for a while now, and I just hope it's coming real soon, because there is an argument that as central support, librarians, IT people, we're not the ones that really should be doing data governance. It's not really for us to say. So it should be coming down through the university structure, the accountability for data governance. And another thing is the contracts team also in Edinburgh Research Office. It takes a long time to make any kind of, if people say, oh, well, I need to share my data with my collaborator starting this project, they might get bogged down in weeks or months of kind of legal, creating a document. It's like we really just need some off-the-shelf templates that for a data use agreement or a data sharing agreement for this restricted access data so that we can make things happen and not have all the data locked up. And here's some of the links that, oh, I think I forgot to say about the digital research facilitators at the top there. As I said, there's this overall umbrella called Digital Research Services, and there's 3 facilitators, 1 for each college, that does a lot of outreach sessions, road shows, goes around knocking on doors kind of thing to help us raise awareness about the services. So that's another one-stop shop to go into the service. So, so those are the 3 links to that. And yeah, thanks for your attention. I look forward to hearing what people think.
So this time for questions and a bit of the discussion. I just want to take the opportunity to put the slides with some questions that I have. So. Okay, I think we have the microphones ready. Robin Rice. Obrigado. So the idea now is to discuss a bit about, from the path, the route that Robin presented, that Edinburgh, the University of Edinburgh did. What kept your attention? What caught our attention here? That okay, this is something that we are doing, or something that we will, for sure, need to progress and to do. This is the first. The second part, the services that they are offering currently. So, what you saw as really quite relevant? What is replicable in your institution? What is more challenging? And then of the challenges to face, also if you identify also one that you should or like to embrace also. This is what we have here in the screen to support and to guide us. I be aware that I invited 3 or 4 persons to comment, but before I invite them to speak, if you have questions, specific questions, okay, we have already. João, please.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for the presentation. So, thinking about the role of the data steward, I was used to think about myself as a data curator, and introducing the notion of data steward really helped me to even to specify my usefulness to the community. So, you also mentioned the perception of researchers. My question is if you think that the concept of data steward can really help to improve the perception of researchers to our services. Well, if this is data stewardship, is this a familiar concept to engage with the researchers? And also you mentioned data policies, and as someone who is writing a data policy, I'm very interested to know in the first interaction taking in consideration, like you mentioned, what should be a mandate, what should be encouraged. I would like to have your opinion on, for the first interaction, what is the mandatory must, so to speak? What should I consider as a must for my first policy? I must considering to encourage to encourage researchers, but I have to consider some things to really to mandate to them. So your input will be very useful here. Thank you.
Before you give the mic away, okay. In terms of the must on the policy, do you think it would work to have a must for every research project must have a data management plan?
Yeah, I'm considering that. But
that's the first one that comes to mind.
Yes, it might mean for me too. I'm a little bit on the fence there, honestly, to mandate such. I already have the first version, but I'm somehow hesitating to implement, and that's the main issue. Should I encourage or should I mandate the data management plan? But I think that is one of the mandates I am really considering in order for this first interaction.
Yeah, there's a lot of good reasons to have data management plans. Our funders have just made it, the UK funders have just made it very inconvenient for those of us trying to reach researchers that way, because they've decided you only need 500 words of a data management plan in the research proposals now, which a lot of times isn't enough to have any detail. It's also arguably too early in the project to have a lot of realistic idea of what data you're collecting. So, yeah, there's a lot of people feel really strongly about data management plans. To me, it's a means to an end, but as my colleague says, time planning is never time wasted, so you can always make that argument. The other ones I guess that come to mind that we've got in our policy is, it's easy to say you must make your data fair, but what does that mean exactly?
Which metrics you're going to use to address it? The data is really fair, isn't it?
It's very hard to go all the way with fully interoperable. So then if you say must to something that is at its ultimate almost impossible to achieve, then, then is it less realistic? But one that we do have in there is must, where possible, deposit data in a repository, because whether that's in some kind of appropriate repository, even if it's restricted access, because I just don't believe in researchers doing digital preservation in the long term for their own data.
Sure. Yeah, my reasoning is a bit like, if I say encourage, nobody will comply. If I say must, maybe I get some people to comply. So maybe I should use must, and let's see if someone will. Be bold,
but then monitor and see if it's working. Very quickly on a data steward, data curator, I think in our context, if there was funding for a lot more staff and we could have, almost like Netherlands style, like spread people out across the disciplines with discipline knowledge and showing people how to do the right thing with their data with the general message, but grounded in the disciplines, that would be very useful for Edinburgh.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I challenge Tiago Paixão and Maria Guedes from the Gulbenkian Institute of Molecular Medicine. Yes, okay. I challenge them because my idea was to challenge some people with the head of a university, with the head of a research institute, with a research infrastructure. So I challenge, do you have any highlight, any challenge, anything that came to that caught your attention? So feel free to share.
Thanks a lot for the talk. It was very interesting. taking as kind of a guideline these points that you wrote there. So what caught our attention, so we are more or less halfway, like at the beginning of our research data management restructuring, right, or implementation at our institute. And to me personally, what caught my attention the most was the fact that we used a lot of some of the lessons that you pointed out, the lessons learned, and we faced essentially the same challenges. Well, like the one about visibility is clearly very, very prominent in our communities. On a more technical note, so we also took the route of having a lot of in-house services, but I'm wondering, why did you took that decision, and essentially, do you see, what are the drawbacks that you see from using, for example, commercial services? Because many of these steps of the services that you have in-house could be provided by external third-party services, right, companies. And that's a discussion we typically have every time we want to implement a new service. Whether should we do it, because the overhead for IT, for example, is a big one, which is also always a limiting resource for us. And sometimes you can just throw money at the problem and try to solve it, right? So I would like to hear your opinion on that, actually.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm glad you raised the visibility thing. I have a couple of thoughts. One is, I think one of the ways it's getting better for us in the UK is people are coming from people move around a lot, and the academics in different institutions, and there's more of an expectation now than there used to be that there will be an RDM service from the library. So if they come from another institution where they've experienced, maybe as a student, or that the repository takes data, or that a librarian has helped them with a data question, or they've been to a conference and they've heard about RDM or open science and somehow learned that library and IT departments, can help, then that makes it easier, because, and also they'll come from our institution and go somewhere else and say, well, who's going to help me with this? And sometimes we get good feedback, like, I've come from UCL and they offer all this, why don't you offer that? So I think the fact that researchers move around will help us get some more uniformity across the institutions, and then researchers will know what to expect as well. And another thing there that I didn't have a chance to say is, so a lot of times, we go to these kind of conferences, and we're talking to each other. We're sort of preaching to the choir. Is there anyone in the audience who considers themselves a researcher? Okay, good. So you're getting a mix of research, or maybe both. See a half hand. Research support and researchers talking together about this stuff is really important to create forums for that. And so one of the things we used to have a dealing with data conference, and now we have an open research conference. But the idea is to get, as like the early career researchers, to submit papers, submit posters. It gives them a platform to practice talking about their research, and we just kind of gently try and get them to give an angle on what they're doing about RDM, or we invite a particular person who's doing something interesting RDM-wise, and then they're doing what they like to do, which is give conference papers, but it's under the banner of like the digital research services, and we have a poster or a lightning talk to make sure everybody gets the message that while you're at this conference, we have these services. So that's another thing. We have the reproducibility student group, and they work with academics in the Edinburgh Open Research, EORI, Initiative. And so they have Friday meetings, they have a Teams area where they can talk to each other about best practice. So it's important to create forums with researchers and let them talk as experts, and not just we're always talking at them, telling them what to do. And the third-party services is a big question. It's being raised right now for us. Are we being, finances in higher education institutions is a big issue, and are we being as efficient as we can with these services that we've committed to, especially the digital library supporting data share and data vault. So we are actually having a little project looking around at options. And for me, it's kind of like, well, if we were going to exit these technologies, how would we do that? And how would we migrate onto something else? And even if it is more costly to do the migration, I think it's important we do the exercise. I think third-party services can work well. You just get the main disadvantage is you might not be able to tinker with it as much. But if you can't afford to do it yourself, then it's much better than doing nothing. Get an institutional space in Zenodo or even Figshare, but brand it. As long as you have a chance to brand it with your university and show where the support is, it's kind of what we're doing with the Open Science Framework at the moment.
But aren't you worried about reliability, for example? Because one big concern that always comes up in these discussions is that, well, these are commercial enterprises that sometimes they go broke, like they disappear, and then off, all our data disappears as well.
I think generally, as long as our university has a contract with the company, and there will be the people who look at the contracts will do the due diligence about data protection and liability and things. As long as the contract's in place, we can encourage people to, like we use Microsoft for email. There's a contract in place. Well, we don't encourage people to use Dropbox because there's no contract in place, or even Google, there's no contract in place. So if there's a contract in place, then the data protection will be looked at, et cetera. And usually, I think if you buy a repository service, you can still make sure that you're moderating the deposits. So it's not the free-for-all that is on the cloud the way it is without a contract.
So still on the visibility, can I make just one more
yes.
comment? On the visibility topic, I found it interesting that your lab book was mostly unknown in many of these, across many of the schools, right? Because for us, it's probably our most popular product, let's say. And in part because like our unit, the one that manages the lab book is very close to research, because I'm head of essentially a data analysis unit that also does data management, right? But our core business is really data analysis, and so we are very close to the researchers. And somehow we managed to get our champion, which was someone in the direction of the institute, to mandate the use of the lab book, which, and it was very well received. So I think in the space of a few weeks, few months, perhaps at most researchers were using it, and they were giving us positive feedback, and then we entered the cycle of improvement and so on. But that was so perhaps. Well, I noticed that many of the schools are not traditional, like hard science schools. They were more social, or perhaps areas that are not very data intensive. So maybe that's one reason. But I found that interesting. That
yeah, I mean the ELN, it's available, but it's not. We haven't done that. You're ahead of us. We haven't done that rolling out of an ELN for everybody. I think there's just too much division about which one we would choose. So it's a brokered situation. It's just, if you want to use this, you can get the license through us, and it's a little discounted. But we're not very far at rolling something out, and I think some people would welcome that. But we're not there yet.
Okay. Maria, do you want to ask?
Actually, I will start by picking up on the topic of the eLab that Tiago said, because, for example, in our case, we are, biomedical institute. So the eLab was well received, but the DMP is mandatory and didn't have the same traction with the community. And we need to remember of the must. So in this case, we are a result of a merger, recent merger, but in Tiago's Institute, they made the DMP an obligation, and most of the researchers, what they opt-in doing was just describing in 15 words what they were doing, and make it like a check, it's done, I will never look at it again. And it's been hard to sell the idea of the DMP as a tool for their work. Yeah? And as a living document, as we discussed today, because they are much more focused, most of them, not all of them, of course, there are exceptions, but the eLab, I think it got the traction because we are dealing with labs that have a lot of bench work and need the eLab to protect with IP problems that are intellectual property issues. That is something that concerns them not as much as data management, because in the limit, the feeling that I get is that they feel that the data is theirs, but the preservation of it is an institutional problem, not theirs. In the limit, I'm being dramatic in my words, but that's kind of the spirit of the words.
We do have some schools that have just really turned off to DMPs. And yeah, I don't know, it's a cultural thing, and I don't know how you turn them back onto it. Like maybe you just go approach it a different way, but I think something that we do that helps, Clara knows Simon, we've got a very kind of charismatic guy that, as well as doing the training, he makes it clear that he's available one-to-one to help anyone with a data management plan. So if it looks like a chore or just like a terrible thing, just sitting down with someone and having a meeting over it. Of course, it's a resource question. Do you have someone on the team who can do that? We're trying to set, obviously we don't have the time to do it for every researcher in the university, so we're trying to set up like maybe some peer-to-peer sessions. I think talking through a data management plan with someone can be very helpful for people, especially in the arts and humanities, social sciences. But I don't know all the answers about DMPs. It's not my favorite thing either, to be honest, and I'm glad I have other team members who do at that aspect.
What we've been trying is to sell them tips and tricks, and kind of, you can have more server space if you have things organized, and you can have that organization and fill in the team on those tricks so that everyone is following the same rules. But it's not working perfectly, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, boilerplate, you can give them boilerplate text and hope that they at least read it, and do it, but at least it'll say the right thing, and then at a later time you can say, oh, remember you said that in your data management plan, are you going to archive your data now?
Thank you. Let's go from the research institute to a big university, Coimbra. I also challenge George. So feel free to capture my attention if you want to speak, okay? So George have also, so he's an executive coordinator, have responsibilities in coordinating support for research. So George, in a big university like Coimbra, what kept your attention here from this presentation?
Yeah, thank you so much, dear Robin. Thank you for inspiring talk. We are glad to see, at least to feel that we are right on track, although we are in the beginning of it. Actually, we have for some time now, we have a policy for open access, mainly focused on publications, articles and stuff, like you just said, as a traditional repository. And for us, also from a while now, we do have some expert skills on high-performance computing, supercomputations, and all the infrastructure related. Still, only recently, we do start to engage and participate in the research data management challenges. So I'm glad to see under your step-by-step process that we are also, let's say, raising RDM action group, quite informal, not formal, with different agents, like in your case, coming from different research units, also from different organic services like libraries and stuff. And yeah, some of us are here, and we are glad to, let's say, hopefully contribute to actually, in the end, be useful to implement some kind of reviewed open access policy and some kind of strategy for the governance of University of Coimbra. We are facing now, and I will share very briefly 2 or 3 thoughts. We are facing now, mainly we are facing now challenges under 2 levels, I would say. Under the institutional level, the governance, which I was quite inspired seeing the way you did it, because we are looking at the best way, how can we do this? Because eventually the process that you suggested here of setting in the beginning different groups could be one way to, after all, merge them in the end and then come to a governance solution. Because we are still facing some issues to, let's say, raise awareness, both under the governance and under the close to the research. So we have this institutional level, let's say this way, where we are trying to contribute freely in a non-formal way, but inspired by our own research and our own motivation, on how we could, let's say, design some service, for instance, or to, let's say, raise some awareness on the close to the directory to invest in some resource allocation, human resource allocation, also some infrastructures allocation. Without that, it would be very hard to implement whatever. On the other hand, we have another level that we are facing some challenges, which is close to the research units, where some of us are integrated. Because some of us are already doing this specific research data management locally. And let's say, depositing, let's say, putting our data sets and curating our data at a very specific and a low level. But this is not integrated. So one of the things, answered directly to one of the points that Pedro raised, I think one of the things that caught my attention is the way you did it, because you started step by step to set different groups, and then when you merge them, you can get to different agents and different partners. And this is one first question for you eventually, if you would like to add some comments on it, is how hard was to engage your top governance, and how difficult it was to bring them in and to, let's say, agree to compose your multidisciplinary team in the beginning, so you can set up these different schemes, different services, and this path that, after all, come up with this brilliant service. Yeah, most of all is it. We are, let's say, looking forward to reach it. We are working on it. We believe in this solution. But we are still not even halfway like the colleagues up there. We are in the beginning of the process. We are quite aware of it. And yeah, we are always collecting new tips so we can get the idea, how can you do this the proper way, in the more effective way. Because we have the perception, and today we listened to João earlier, and we have this perception that eventually it wouldn't be too hard to set, let's say, a central service to some kind of science management support or something like this to clarify or to raise awareness and promotion under how relevant it is, the RDM and the open science, open access policies. But this is not exactly the same of setting and providing a specific data steward process, low level and specifically, let's say, focused on the advising the researchers in specific projects. So eventually, this is the second part of my question. So, do you have any kind of recommendations for next steps when we are trying to set, because you are now having the opportunity with Pedro also and a lot of part of this community to set a national network for data stewards? Do you think it was useful? Is there any kind of this kind of national network back in your home? And either, if yes or not, do you think they are useful to, let's say, to promote this and to address all these challenges? Thank you.
Just that.
Pages, like, good luck with that. Okay, well, I'm glad the talk resonated. A lot of thoughts with you. I mean, nationally in the UK, there doesn't seem to be much going on, but there is some EU project funding for developing a data stewards network, and I know the DCC is talking with people at GISC, trying to get something off the ground. I recently went over to Ireland. They're going quite strong with the National Data Stewards Network, because I was trying to find out, what do data stewards do? Are we data stewards, or is it something else? But yeah, I think it's important to remember that individuals involved in this are good at different things and are attracted by different aspects of this. So like, I guess part of the story I was trying to tell is like, with the action group is, there was an excitement there that like, we're on the cusp of some kind of change and we can do this together. But the people that maybe got around that group are not the same people that are going to be good at the job descriptions we then needed to fill, of like being very detail-oriented with the metadata, and or good at the outreach with the researchers. And so, obviously, you might not have infinite money to employ zillions of people, but it is important to try not to put everything onto one person or one very small team. There's, I think in the RDM field, we've had the issue of like unicorn jobs, where, well, you've seen some of these jobs, like you have to be able to reach stakeholders and think strategically and review all the metadata and help people with data management plans. And those are arguably all different kinds of skills, also different disciplines. So it's quite tough. So I think you just got to like try to play to people's strengths. If you have a group of change makers that can that have some access to people in the institution who hold the money, hold the power, then can get through to them, then use them for that. And also work with the early adopters, the researchers, because there's always going to be the stick in the muds that don't want to change. But find the early adopters; you can turn them into champions if there's enough excitement.
Yeah, it has to do with scale also. If I may, just one last remark. We have 10 faculties and more than 40 research centers with, let's say, hundreds of persons. And yeah, it's hard to make them comply or align and follow specific, let's say, central orientations. I think dimension is an issue also.
Thank you, George. So feel free to ask questions. We have time. We are in this panel discussion. I also challenge to other persons from more a personal perspective. Let's say that Maria, Tiago, and now George was more on the perspective of someone that is coordinating something in the institution. I also challenge Clara Boavida and Maria Paola Tomasino. In fact, Maria you are the open science and data management person. So microphone there in Maria. And here the perspective is that Maria is from the CIMAR, the Interdisciplinary Center of Marine and Environmental Research of the University of Porto. So it's an infrastructure, it's also a research center. So Maria, what do you have to say?
Sim. Thanks, Robin, for your presentation. It was quite inspiring and full of suggestions and tips. I took some notes of something that could be useful. Yes, as Pedro told, I am the new in this role and new for the institution of Data Steward and Open Science, responsible of our research center. And I have a background of researcher, so I feel this as data management as a big goal of our community. And yes, we are more at this early stage because we feel, and I personally feel, and I'm trying to join colleagues and groups of researchers that could be part of this group to promote research data best practices, such as the ones that you suggest, to create a policy or to create storage solution for the institution. I think that this is working well because I find some good feedback from researchers because I know the needs and the gaps in the research, so I can do this connection easily. What is more complicated is to establish a policy in terms of what is we should it should be mandatory or not, and what was already, we were talking already about this. And talking about something that could be more challenging for us is make interoperable tools, because I think that we don't have a lot of tools in-house, so what it could help at this stage for us, and I think that what is going to happen in Portugal, and at least in my point of view, is working well, is to make a network and try to take advantage from other institutions to make centers, that what we are doing, research management, for doing research data management. And because it's not a competition actually, it's a kind of collaboration that we should do to improve and to go to improve open science practices. And was the question of national network, if you experience something like this, but it was already done by the previous colleague. And so my question is more about how did you face, it is what I'm feeling now, that the young generation is more sensible to some new tools like electronic lab notebook or the sharing of the data, because I mean, they already are in this mood. But some senior researchers are stuck and doesn't want to cooperate in this. So how did you face this resistance? How did you encourage this? And let me see if I took note of something. No, it was more this. And
Great.
thanks again.
Maria, thank you very much.
So I think I'll just repeat what I said about early adopters. You know, you've got limited time in your week to do things. So if you do have people who are keen, you know, work with them. You know, wherever everybody is in their good practice, they can be a little better. You know, so you could work with everyone to, well, you've done this step. How about taking this step further? If there is someone that's really like entrenched and against it, might not be the wisest to go head to head, you know, and try and confront them. They might be better influenced by their own peers and their funders, and it'll come around to them because it's in the culture. So I just fight, you know, I said the number of researchers we have. If someone's difficult to work with, don't work with them. Go find someone else to work with, because your time is limited. And look for the champions, you know, as you go, who can, you know, echo the message and make it stronger. The other thing that you were saying, like, you know, policy might be difficult. It doesn't have to be that difficult. You know, you can keep it very simple. Our first policy was 10 bullet points, and it was almost pretty much 10 sentences almost. It fit on you know, just one side of the paper, and I think a lot of people thought that was a big advantage because it was something researchers would read and not like glaze over, and they could take it in. And the second policy is really the same 10 points, but just we felt it needed a bit more context. So it is a longer policy now, but hopefully just as readable. But just keep it simple, you know. Because you can revise it later and make it more complicated as things grow.
Great, thank you very much. We are coming to the end. We have questions there. Just asking Clara, and then I give you the word, Pedro. Just from the perspective of a data steward, someone that is supporting research projects. Clara, boa vida. Yes, of course.
I forgot to say, I think we should be careful about age stereotypes, because it's not always the young that embrace the change, and there has been some research, I can't name it off the top of my head, that finds that the senior researchers are more willing to do the new things because their career is not at stake. So there's all kinds of factors, and well, there is a generational thing because people are used to sharing social media, and it's an easy step to make, but it's not always the case.
Thank you, Robin, for your excellent presentation and for the photo. Reminds me very happy moments. For me, learning about how to organize training and how you manage sensitive data and how you organize the curation process were three aspects of research data management that were very interesting to learn from my experience. And I would like to point out two aspects. One of the main concerns we have is how best to deal with sensitive data and data that cannot be anonymized, and which is very common in the, for example, anthropological areas, ethnographic studies. And how did you get over this barrier? I know that you use Data Vault repository. Can you explain that a little bit more about the role of the Data Vault and how to get over the barrier of this? Because we are thinking to implement one institutional research data repository, but how can we deal with these sensitive data that cannot be anonymized and these kind of issues? The other aspect that I would like to ask you is about your investment and effort in the quality of data documentation. That is extremely important factor in ensuring that research data can be understood and reused by others. And I know that your process of curating data sets and their documentation is validated with great care. Can you, because mostly of us are librarians and probably we will deal with these tasks in the future, can you elaborate a little more about the curation process that you have implemented? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your observations. Yeah, the Vault, it's arguably a little overkill for most institutions. It might be that you could use the embargo feature of your repository for the restricted access. We were trying to make it so secure that it's not an internet-facing system. It's only available on or you can only even see the website if you're already in the local area network. So you can't even see it on the internet. And that was to make it super secure. But you could arguably just use a regular repository and put something under permanent embargo and handle restricted access that way. You just have to be worried about hackers. I guess there's a point that, speaking of policies, there's the university-wide policy, but you can do a lot with policies of the systems itself, too, the terms of service and under what conditions you'll hold things and who's the data owner when it goes in. And there's a lot of policy work within the repository itself that kind of shapes the service. I'm aware no one else has built a vault, so maybe it's not something that is generally needed. But yeah, there's always things with like legacy data that are just difficult to deal with everywhere. And it helps to have a restricted access option for that too, as well as the sensitive data. Documentation and metadata, yeah, as you're aware, we have kind of a checklist for deposit that we show the researchers. They may or may not read it when they actually deposit, but it kind of shows them, gives them a hint of what we're going to be looking for when they deposit. We define a data set as not just a data file, but also human readable documentation. So if there isn't any, if someone just puts up a spreadsheet with no documentation, we'll most likely reject it on the first. We try not to use the word reject, but it is literally, that's the step in the workflow, is we're rejecting this and sending it back to you. And as you know, the curators on our team who do that are very diplomatic in their communication, and it's kind of a negotiation process, because when the researcher deposits and they want that DOI to put in their paper, which has a deadline, sometimes it's the only point that we have them captive, and we can say, yeah, you want the DOI, but we want more metadata. So if there isn't a documentation file, we'll say, well, can you at least please put in a README file that explains how you would make use of what the different files are, or something like that. So we have this minimal standard. There must be documentation, or it doesn't count as a data set. And we also tell them about future-proofing their files and things like that. But the stop and go things are like spot checking. Does it look like there's personal data in here, and have they dealt with that? Maybe they need to upload a copy of the consent form along with it, or just make sure that they know there's personal data, and is it anonymized to the best of their ability? Things. We have a checklist for deposit, which people could look at for different things. Open license. We used to have people make a decision about the open license, and now we just have a default open license. And if you want to make a decision, you can reject the open license and do something else. But especially if they know what they're doing, they want a different open license. But it turned the repository from being largely not open licenses to 99% open licenses. So you can set up the workflow so that people do the right thing. And the checklist for deposit can be quite useful, I think.
Thank you very much. So Pedro Sobral, and then we have time for one more question, and then we close. Thank you.
Hello, thanks Robin for the presentation. I have a sharp question, that is, if you can share a little bit more of the long-term preservation or retention plan in the university, namely, for example, is for all the projects. If not, how do you select? For example, how do you select the projects that are able to be long-term retention? Is there a solution plan, for example, for addressing the potential storage problem in the future? So what are your considerations about these topics? Thank you.
Okay, so data share is set up so members of the university and their collaborators can deposit. We do say that we'll try to keep it indefinitely. We could make a decision later on we give them a depositor agreement that says it's up to us what we do with it. We might change it for the sake of digital preservation. If we might withdraw it, it's, don't sue us. It's ours now, you're handing it over. But we don't select in data share. What we say about our data quality is that because it's University of Edinburgh researchers, there's some element of a stamp of quality there. It's their research, and so therefore it has some quality to it. Basically, we put it in there and let the usage statistics determine what gets used and what doesn't. And it is something we want to put more effort into, is looking at what's getting used, what's getting cited, and also make some publicity about that, because we've got over 6,000 data sets in there now, and so we could make some noise about what's in it. A couple of them are kind of famous, but we don't do the selection. I guess where the selection might take place in the future is with Data Vault. As the periods of storage expire, we have to go back over the decision of what to. So the period has expired. Do we actually delete it? And we try and find the data owner, or whoever should be the data owner now, if the data owner's left the institution, to make that decision rather than have an automatic delete. So there could be selection there where future librarians could say, but this data set is promising. We want to curate it, and we want to put more on it and make it more useful. You know, that could happen. But at the moment, yeah, minimal on the selection. On the grounds, we work with IT people who say, oh, storage in the future, you know, is all the myth. I don't know if it's true, don't know if it will be true, that it'll become less costly, but it does seem like things are getting bigger, so data sets of today will seem small compared to the future. But I know with the concern about resources for global warming and AI use and stuff, it shouldn't be so flippant about what you store and it being cheap. But we were in the early stages of storing research data, and we hadn't really gotten to the appraisal step yet. I don't know if anyone has.
Great, thank you very much. Quite rich. So to finish, João Moreira, please.
Hi. My question relates to the European Open Science Cloud. I wonder what are you thinking on how to integrate your research data center data and services with EOSC and vice versa? What services are you expected to use from the EOSC community? Yeah.
It's kind of like a disciplinary specific question, I think. Like, so the researchers that have a community in EOSC are very welcome to use that. The policy makes it clear that people should use the appropriate repository or storage solution. So there are occasions where we might say, are you sure you want to use the university one? Because there's this disciplinary, the data will be understood better in this repository where it's curated with like data. We do understand the concept that disciplinary repositories can be better. It's just that a lot of the researchers come back and say, well, there isn't a repository out there, so we're very glad this university one exists. And I guess they have some pride in depositing with the university, because we know they could go to Zenodo or Figshare and no one would check it, no one would come back and reject it for their DOI, but I think, they take some pride in having it be in the University of Edinburgh one. But EOSC, we're still trying to learn how to plug into EOSC. We kind of look to our Digital Curation Center to try and give us some heads up about where EOSC is going, and looking forward to more future cooperation and integration, but it's early days for us, our understanding on it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So let's close this session. It was great. Our idea was to give time to not to be in a rush, to give time for us to digest. So as we saw from some comments here, there are already institutions that are in fact offering interesting services in Portugal. We see the example from Edinburgh, but as we saw also here, this is relevant. So we say in that song, the path is made by walking. So when we are walking, I think we are doing in some institutions a very good job. In others, we are just starting. But it's important to start offering RDM services, involving and engaging with researchers, so early adopters, champions, as Robin said, working together with other services. So we really need to be aware that it's impossible to do it one single service, only the research support service, or only the IT, or only the library. I think this is quite interesting. And then also the idea of the different components, the puzzle. So we offering services without training, having a strategy without policy, this is something that doesn't work. We know that, and sometimes it's difficult. So I think we are in a good position in some institutions. I think we are we are shaping, interesting the roadmap in Portugal. I think we will have very good opportunities. But even if it is difficult, because we need to do training for services, we need to have policies for strategy. It's worth doing. It's worth doing. Let's do it. Let's start sometimes with imperfections, but at least we start and we offer something. Do you want to have any final comment, Robin? It's great.
No, that was so eloquent. I think we should leave it there.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have plenty of time today to digest these things and to comment. Sarah, join me and let's start. We go to the next session, a noisy session with posters. People from posters start joining here.